So, good morning. Good morning, everyone. Today is the day number 7 of this bootcamp on COVID-19. We will host the second day focused on economic sustainability. Yesterday, we had a class, 2 keynote speeches on sustainability. Today we will continue focusing on the market, and later in the afternoon we will have a speech about new methods for supply chain. So today the first speaker is Beatrice. I invite her to share a screen and to introduce herself. Good morning, Beatrice.
Good morning, Carmelo. Thanks for the introduction. Am I able to share my screen? Have you enabled that?
Try.
Just give me a quick second. Just tell me when you can see it. I hope it comes up soon. Finally. Tell me what you can see.
Yeah, we can see your screen. You can see your screen, and now
see the slides?
in presentation mode.
Okay. What slide can you see now?
The first one.
Okay. So hello everyone. Allow me to keep the video off. My bandwidth is not very optimized today. My name is Beatrice Murage. I am part of the Philips family, currently based out of the Research Africa Innovation Hub. Very closely aligned with one of the 4 international hubs we have in terms of research and innovation, and that is the Bangalore hub. So in terms of what we work on is in the space for just health technology solutions, focused a lot on growth markets, of course, Asia, Africa, a bit with LATAM as well, but then also trying to see how can we use frugal innovation to sort of, just export that kind of solution to other markets that are more established. Thank you, Carmelo, again for just inviting me for this lecture today. What we have is the topic of African market understanding on medical devices. So I'm going to combine a bit from our experience at Philips. The Philips, I'm wearing 2 hats today. So we have Philips, the Royal Philips, which is a commercial entity, which is where research is based within. And then, of course, we have the Philips Foundation, which is more the really market phasing and just the innovation also funding arm of Philips as well. Since we work with both entities of Philips very closely, then we'll be able to share a bit from just what our experience is, and I think even just what we've been able to invest in terms of this kind of work within the African continent. And I'll also expand it to, let's say, growth markets as well. And looking at also a few background pieces on just the whole topic that I'll be addressing. So a mix of research, a mix of innovation, and a mix of just what we do in the sustainability space. Here, I'll just ask, I'll indulge you. I can see, I don't know if everyone can unmute themselves, Carmelo, because I wanted this to be a bit of an interactive slide. I just wanted to hear from the audience today, who knows any of these statements and what they mean?
People are allowed to unmute themselves if they want.
Yes. So you can just pick any and tell me what you think it means. Any takers from the audience? I'll be patient.
Hello.
Hello.
Hi.
Yes, Pearl. You want to pick one? Tell us what it means.
I'm going to pick sorry, this is very difficult. I don't know what a lot of these, a business model canvas. And I'd guess it pretty much just describes the structure of the business in terms of who works where and what systems are needed to work together. I could be wrong.
At least you're brave enough to take. Okay, so I hear you. Any other takers? Thanks, Pearl.
Hello.
Hello. Yes, Bernard.
Stakeholders map. I think this is where you have everyone who is a part of your project or your program, and then looking at them and looking who is going to affect what and how all the stakeholders in a project or a program are going to influence the outcome.
Okay, okay. Thanks, Bernard. Anyone else? So we have 2 down. Okay, so I will not tell you what the rest mean. So I'll give you that as homework. I'll only mention one thing. A lot of our discussion today would really borrow on a lot of these concepts. So we'll mention some. The rest we'll say is homework. I mentioned this because when you're working, not just in the African market, but in any place where you're working on an innovation, let's say sort of focused piece of work, it's important to understand these concepts because then they affect one, how you build your solution, how you design it. Are you even aware that you need to speak to the market? Our focus here being market in Africa today. And then what is just the kind of process that you need to look at. These are also the kinds of things that we look at even within Philips. I work very specifically within the innovation and strategy team where research is domiciled. And our job is really to just work like a typical startup, but within Philips. Be able to look into the market, see what are the needs, what can we be able to build? Are there new ideas, maybe on existing products and services and solutions that we have, or maybe just coming up with something different altogether? So what you're doing as innovators, as entrepreneurs, doesn't just happen outside of a multinational or outside of a company. It's also something that can happen within an organization like Philips, for example. So there are concepts I think I would encourage us to be familiar with, and I will move on to expound some of them during today's call. So we have this particular, I think just a practice from research. I like to highlight sources that I use, especially if it's public information. So this entire slide today is mostly from publicly available information. And I'll just encourage you to have a look at these articles when you go through them later. So I want to focus on something we call patient journey mapping when you're talking about the African market. I could speak theoretically, or I could speak from practice. I think the main thing about this entire team of innovators that are part of UBORA this year is to always ask yourself, what solution, what problem in the market am I solving with my product or device or service or solution it is, whatever it is that I'm building? What pain point in the market am I solving? And for you to be able to answer that question, you always need to understand, just actually go outside and be able to interact with the market. You cannot build a device. One of the things we've noticed a lot is people do what we call maybe back engineering, for lack of a better word. You come up with a device, you look at problems, maybe you don't validate them with actual customers, you build something, then you take it to the market to try and just validate it with potential customers or end users. And that usually doesn't go very well. It should be the first step. And it takes a lot of work. It's painful, it's uncomfortable, especially if you're not what we'd call a people person and you don't like to go out of your comfort zone a lot, but it's very, very key if you're going to look at the African market. So I want to introduce you to a concept called the patient journey mapping. It's one of the anchor processes of what we do even within Philips. It's also domiciled within our strategy, being able to see the end-to-end journey of a patient. Because I'm thinking we're talking medical devices. So whatever it is that you're building is going to affect a patient, or at least is going to have an impact in terms of health to the end user. So you need to be able to start understanding the concept of mapping a patient's journey, so that you can understand, if I were a typical user of whatever it is that you've built, what am I going to be going through from the beginning of my process, walk through that person virtually from the time they have a trigger. Will the trigger be, let's say, a disease process? Will the trigger be a symptom? Will the trigger be, let's say, being asked by my employer to go get a health check? And be able to walk through the entire journey that that patient will go through until they complete it. Then you're able to identify, where would my device add value? And not value as you see it, but value as the pain point on the journey presents itself. So I'd just encourage you to have a read on this article, so that you can be able to see, just within this space, where is the issue of patient journey mapping coming about. And in terms of just being able to build, let's say, your market understanding from an Africa perspective. Interesting to see that as we have worked within our team, one of the things we're very keen to do is we always go to the market. And it's an interesting part of research, because it's not, let's say, what you'd call traditional scientific research, but it's starting to embed what people typically call market research as part of your exploration process. That you have whatever process you use. If you use a lean startup process, you have things we call test cards after you've gone through your journey mapping and your stakeholder mapping, and you're able to see what kind of experiments or questions do you want to find out from the market. Take that to a typical customer, even sit with them sometimes, observe, go to a facility if you expect your device to be based at a facility, observe what it means for a patient to have that kind of care. Also identify, is it, let's say, a primary care facility? Are you looking at an advanced facility? Are you looking at a district hospital, or let's say a national hospital in your context? You have to be there to see and experience that pain, because there's something about that experience that shapes your design and even your medical device build-up that you just cannot have if you're not able to go to the market and observe. There's another paper I'd also like to just encourage us to read through. It also drills down again on the whole concept of patient journey mapping, which I think is, again, one of the places you really do need to focus on. There's a whole bit about personas. So whether it's a patient persona, we could also call it an end user persona. Maybe the user of your device is not the patient. Maybe the user of your device is a health worker. Maybe the user of your device is a healthy person. But being able to just identify, who do I envision using my device? If it's, let's say, a grandmother in our rural areas in Africa, chances are, one, they might not be very comfortable with English. So if you have a device that interaction would need maybe English instructions, it won't work, you know? Or if you have your end user is probably a medical worker, yeah, it could be a very basic, let's say, skilled worker. It could be a community health worker for where you have. So it's always important to look at your patient persona, because then it informs how complex or how simple your device needs to be. Sometimes it's even in terms of the instructions that you're giving. If yours is a device that comes with a software piece, or even, let's say, what we call connected medical device sort of approach, then you need to see what kind of instructions do I need to give? Do they need to just be English? Do we need to look at, let's say, because Africa has what we call, in terms of the official language use, you have your very predominantly English-speaking parts of Africa and your predominantly French-speaking parts of Africa. And you need to just understand, we found out that one of the reasons a lot of the donated equipment in Africa just lie there and they're not used is because people just do not understand the instructions, because they come in a language that you just do not understand. That's one. Another piece is because of the parts. Maybe the parts are expensive. I probably have to import them again instead of just finding them locally sourced. So these things about patient persona is key. Always, let's say, draw an example of the kind of end user or patient that will be utilizing your device, and just list down their characteristics. Walk with them through the different encounters and the tasks, the goals, the constraints, and the main reasons that would affect the use of your device in this process. Then the idea is to see what kind of timeline are you looking at? Would they be able to interact with whatever you're building from home, in the hospital, and afterwards? Are they interacting with it only at home, only in the hospital, and within the hospital at what times? So just being able to paint your scenarios very clearly, even before you have started designing your solution. And when you're at the early stage, it's important to thrash this out. It's cheaper to fix this early in your innovation process than later. Then also being able to understand something we call 3 journeys. You have your emotional journey, your physical journey, and then you have touch points. Sometimes it's easy, your device is easy to use, but then again, within the African context, what are the cultural, what are the cultural aspects associated with this? We found that a hospital bed can be considered one of the medical device groupings. And we found out that sometimes this was a case for maternity, whereby the birthing bed, or what we call the labor bed, so to speak, was not being utilized in a particular facility very well. This was when I was in practice, not in Philips, since Philips doesn't do beds. But the mothers just would not use the bed. And when we came to ask them later, why don't you use this bed? You'd rather give birth at home. It's risking your life than come to the facility. It was because of the way it is shaped. Then they had to lie on their backs to be able to push the baby. But culturally speaking, for them, the way they give birth is they need to squat, just squat. And if you have a bed that allows that kind of functionality, instead of having to lie on your back, then you have better uptake of your device. So you see, there was a cultural bit, there was also an emotional bit, because they felt if you cannot squat, then you're not just applying yourself in bringing this baby forth. So those are aspects you would never ever dream of unless you go to a facility, unless you're able to map a journey like this. From the first set of words that we had, there's just the value proposition canvas. This is how it looks like. These are commonly available tools. They're actually publicly available tools. And one of the things you need to look at when you're looking at the African market is just to understand, you always start at least with the image on your right. What is your customer profile or your end user profile? Because sometimes customer and end users are 2 different things. Your customer is probably the person who's going to pay for your solution or for your device. The end user is the person who's going to end up using it. So let's say, for example, you have a device, it's in a hospital. Your customer might be the hospital management that actually makes that decision at the budget level to pay you. Your end user might end up being the doctor or the patient. So it's always important to look at both. And what are they currently experiencing in terms of pain? What are the jobs that they're doing? And what you're building introduce in terms of gains for them? So being able to map this up early is very important. And like I say, within the Africa market, a phone call is not enough. You need to go to the hospital. You need to go to the person who you envision using your solution and be able to work through this. Then look at your value proposition. I mean, whatever you're building at some point, I don't think you're building these things for fun. You want to be able, for most of you, I imagine, is be able to actually build a business out of it. And the business, your value proposition is a key anchor point to just your entire business case and even model. Because if people feel whatever you're building does not add value to them, even though in your view, it is valuable. And even though you took it through an actual testing process, it demonstrates value. As long as that value is not perceived or equally agreed to by your customer and end user, your value proposition and your business case will crumble. So you need to be able to see what are you offering in terms of products, in terms of services, and we're moving further and further away from products and services standalone to what we call solutions, because a lot of things are becoming integrated. So now if you're just working on a device alone, that model will not work very well, because you're moving more and more towards connected devices where you have your hardware and your software coming together. You have, let's say, your maintenance services as part of your solution. You have, let's say, education services on how to use these things. Then you have your analytics and your data platform. So what we are building in what we traditionally call the medical device space is growing more and more. So it's trying to see, what are you offering? what pain are you relieving? And it needs to be the biggest pain points they see. Sometimes maybe your devices needs to start really simple to address what we call your low-hanging fruit. Then you can be able to build upon it after it has traction, after at least there's uptake, and then grow on it as you go in terms of gainers. Let me drill down a bit on what we do at Philips and how that relates at least to the Africa market and just growth markets generally, and how we look at just this whole patient journey mapping piece, process. So this is part of Philips' global strategy, what we call the continuum of care, whereby you need to be able to look at your patient or at your end user from home all through the system and back. So where are you playing? In this Africa market, where do you want to play? Do you want to play in terms of just promoting healthy living? Do you want to play in the place of prevention? Do you want to play mostly in diagnosis and treatment or home care? Or do you want to see a way whereby your device then can be connected, of course, by the software strengthening of it, that it plays across the entire continuum? So this is something you need to start thinking about as innovators, that healthcare just doesn't happen in the hospital alone anymore. And especially in Africa, whereby just because our health insurance is not as strong or as consolidated or as at, let's say, as easy to afford as developed markets, we have a health financing issue. I mean, if I look at Kenya, where our hub is based, the regional hub is based, if a person gets sick, even if you have your social insurance, your national insurance, and you have your private insurance, sometimes you just have to pay out of pocket. And that means your relatives will come together and have to contribute for you. So if you're looking just at the disease process, maybe it's too late. The other thing I've noticed with just our African context, people wait until it's too late before they go to the hospital. So it becomes a bit more expensive. Sometimes it's because we do not have anyone offering much in terms of the healthy living and prevention space, in terms of screening, in terms of just being able to detect things early, in terms of just living a prevention, driven sort of lifestyle. So let's say what you'd find in a market like Africa, vis-a-vis, let's say, a different market that's outside of Africa, if you mapped this patient journey, it will be different. And that is how then you tweak those differences to be addressed by whatever device, product, service, or solution that you're building. The other thing I want to encourage us, we need to also look at where the market is going globally. And as we are innovating in terms of devices, let's not just think hardware alone. We need to start thinking of what we call connected care. And connected care means you need to be able to see how can I access, whether it's the device functionality or the data across different places. And of course, when you look at connected devices like Fitbit, for example, that's a connected device, because I can be able to just use it with different pieces. And sometimes it doesn't have to be a fancy smartphone app. It could be an SMS, that comes attached to this medical device, something that just allows you maybe to even let someone know when it's not working, but just start thinking connected devices, not just standalone hardware alone, because then that will not last for long. So there's a space for that, especially a lot within our context where internet connectivity is still a challenge. Electricity is still a challenge. But I always say, if we just borrow from what the finance industry has done, wherever there is a phone, wherever you can get an M-Pesa service, that means there's some sense of connectivity that you can ride on to strengthen the value proposition that you offer through your device. So in terms of this strategic focus, we're looking at data-enabled connected care. We're looking at teaming up. Again, medical devices and medical device related solutions are not standalone things that we develop in the lab anymore. They have to be informed by what we are picking from markets. So we are moving more from a selling relationship, you just sell your device and you walk away, to a partnership, being able to work with, let's say, your customers or your end users for the longer term. And that means it needs to be something built around just your device. It has to be around whatever it is that they need and what can you be able to do, what is within your scope to do, and what is not. So things like maintenance service, things like just even helping them as you listen to their needs as they use your device, how can you improve it? That they also feel like they're part of your innovation. So there's that whole concept of open innovation. Innovation is not just for you as a team, where you keep your information and no, it's an open process. And then the whole idea of just moving from just selling a device to different kind of business models, depending on what you want to be able to offer. Like I mentioned, services, education services on top of it. Do you have analytics there? Do you have, let's say, even in terms of project management support? Because sometimes using your devices, if you want to scale, might require more work, might require someone to actually even look at it from a bioengineering point of view. So can you be able to actually expand from just selling a device to building a relationship, let's say, with your customers and your end users? We're also at Philips looking at something we call the quadruple aim, which I encourage us as innovators to also think about, because it's fashioned after industry trends. And that is 4 things. How will your patient experience change in using your device? Always ask yourself that question. If this is intended for a patient to eventually interact with, how will I enhance the experience? Then look at health outcomes. How do I envision the use of my device will improve health outcomes? How will I lower cost of care? How can I improve the work life of care providers? If you can always find a way to answer these questions as you are building your solutions and your devices, then it not only gives you value in terms of the trends within just the general health tech market and not just Philips alone, but it expands you to a place whereby you have value, not just at the sale point, but even through your entire relationship with the customer. There's something else we also look at Philips, and that's our roadmap to win. And I brought this up because I wanted you to just look at how many times customer comes up, how many times just the idea of integrated solution, value, you know, the whole thing about just growth opportunities, transformation. So customers are the core. They're the core of your business as an innovator. So that's why then you always need to ask about market fit. Always keep checking with the market. Even after you've launched whatever it is you're launching as a device, always keep checking with the market. And you don't have to wait until it's perfect. Always ask yourself, what's my minimum, viable product, or what's just my minimum set of functionality that I need to just meet my specific or my biggest pain points as far as I've discovered from the market. Then you build up from there. Because sometimes I've noticed a lot of our innovators in Africa, we want something to be perfect. You want, because then you're looking at your competitors, let's say a Philips or something like that. And then you're thinking, oh, mine is too simple. Start somewhere. There's a niche you're filling, and as you grow, then you grow. Okay, because I'm thinking even within Philips, sometimes you just have to start somewhere and grow within it. Of course, when you look at, let's say, the risk price and even just, what do you call it? Just the net factor in terms of if it doesn't work out, maybe it's a bit more costly for a young innovator. But I always say your biggest differentiator in the market, no matter how good your solution is a relationship you have with your clients, the relationships you have with your customer. Because someone else will come and try and disrupt your device or even your app or whatever it is that you've built. But if you have a trust relationship, especially in the healthcare industry, because it takes time to build trust. Once your customers trust you and you safeguard that trust, you'll be in business for a long time, as long as you're addressing their pain points, okay? The other aspect I mentioned for us as Philips, Royal Philips Innovation is something important. We look at this value we call open innovation. And that's just a concept I think we also appreciate even within our innovator society, whereby it involves sharing expertise. You know, forums like this, and I think UBORA is a fantastic forum to just bring people together to share ideas. And it doesn't have to wait for a summer school like this, even on other terms, as long as it's within, I guess, the allowable information to share, then please always look at a way you can learn from others. You can't, your product or your device is not going to be the silver bullet for Africa market. That's something even we at Philips recognize. And you can't work alone. Sometimes there are people who've done this better. Sometimes it's a collaboration effort than a competition effort. And sometimes it's for you meeting a niche that no one else can meet. So when I measure the business model canvas, I have a look at it sometime, is getting to just see, where do I stand? Where in this big market am I? What does the market look like? Always do your market analysis. Do your competition landscaping. I always get wary when I go to an innovation forum and people say, this is the only solution we ever had. I've never seen someone else do something like this. So you're like, okay, I'd really want you to be able to prove that. So it's trying to just understand your market. Market understanding is everything. It's a make or break for you at your design phase, at your implementation, at your revenue, and even thereafter. So it's just encouraging us to just be a bit more open-minded in terms of looking at it from open innovation. So we just don't encourage it, we invest in it. And I think it was important to just highlight that even in this session. I'd encourage you to go to that link and see challenges. So one of the things that Philips also releases challenges. I haven't seen a lot of applicants from the African market. I think maybe it's just a lack of awareness. So I'll do my bit, share the opportunity, have a look, see whether there's anything that could be an opportunity for you to showcase what you're doing. And of course, again, when it's something that's public like that, always do your bit and your homework to always know what part of your innovation do you want to share about, what part of it do you want to keep. So the whole discussion about intellectual property, about just how you safeguard your work, because then the other bit is that you never do anything because of the paralysis that you think someone will steal your idea. And that's always one concern, I think, when young innovators are working with established companies. So even before you've engaged anyone else, always try to see, what can I be able to share that's good enough to give what it is that we're doing, and what would I be able to keep until maybe a later date of engagement. The other thing is that we also run an innovation award. Again, we don't have too many companies or innovators in Africa applying, so I'm encouraging us to do that. It's interesting to see that the one that won today, of course, had someone, I think, out of Africa, but moved to the Netherlands for school. And they've been able to build something very interesting in the AI space. And this innovation award doesn't have to be health tech particularly. It's open, just something that's relevant for the market again. And of course, if it's health tech, the better. So also things to look at. A bit about what we do within Research Africa and what we've learned about just the Africa market. So there are a lot of things we do, but I just highlighted those 2 points. Understanding people and experience design. So this is not something I'm saying, it's something we've also learned that we have to do. You have to go to the market, you have to do your end user research, you have to do your end user investigation, you need to map out workflows and all those things before you've even created a solution, whether it's a device or a software application, whatever it is, you first need to understand what is the pain, so that then whatever you're building responds to that particular experience. Then there's a whole bit about the connected products. Like I said, standalone devices is not the future, to be honest. More and more so, even if you start with a standalone hardware device, please have something in your roadmap that will allow you to convert that to a connected device. Because we are moving more and more, as the world become more tech-driven, we're moving more and more towards, let's say, connected solution, and healthcare is not an exception. Of course, and that means as innovators, you need to be on your toes in terms of data security aspects, in terms of just privacy aspects. So I hope all of you have at least familiarized yourself with what HIPAA looks like. That's mostly the American standard. GDPR, that's mostly a European standards, and any other standards. Because I know one of the gaps we have within Africa, we don't have a lot of those restrictions. So a lot of governments do come and try to do something about it. Like in Kenya, I see we have our Data Act, we have a few in the health space. Please familiarize yourself, because healthcare is very sensitive. So data breaches and just the whole bit about standards and the regulation framework around it, as innovators, is something you need to really, really bring yourself up to speed on. Otherwise, even if you bring your innovation and we ask you about CE marking, about FDA approval, and you have no idea what it is. About, let's say, even in Kenya, I know you have KEBS. In different countries, I'm sure in Africa, you have your standards body to regulate your medical devices, that you understand that you understand where you fall, that you understand what you're doing. The moment you come to me, let's say, and pitch an idea, I just want to know, have you understood the regulation pieces? Have you started engaging that ecosystem? And who are you talking to? Otherwise, your journey will just be long, arduous, and most likely not successful. I also want to mention something else we've done through the Philips Foundation. In terms of just promoting what we're doing in medical devices and just health tech devices in Africa. And one of the things we did was just invest in a project based out of Kenya, the Makerspace. And this one was actually driven by the need I'd mentioned earlier, whereby we have devices, fantastic devices. Sometimes they're even imported or even bought. But then they stay there, you use them, after a few days, they're broken and that's it. And you have a small part, but I have to go through so much paperwork, so much money, probably even imported. So the idea of the Makerspace was to see, can you even just invest in talent within Africa to just build these parts? Because some of them are really just not complex. You can actually build them. You can actually then keep and also build a culture of maintenance. Because I think we are also becoming a lot of an instant, you know, like instant coffee, for lack of a better analogy, sort of generation, whereby if it doesn't work, if it's broken, then you throw it away. But you can't always do that, especially with devices. So just building a maintenance culture with our biomedical engineering talent within the continent, just being able to see how you partner with maker spaces, how you partner with, let's say, fab labs that already exist within the continent, such that then they can also be suppliers, not just consumers, but suppliers of some of these medical parts as well. And with that, I am done and I'm open to questions or comments at this point. I think we still have a few minutes left.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Beatrice, for your talk. Any question? Stacy, group 1, feel free to talk.
Hello, hi, I have a question. One of the things you've mentioned under Philips Research Africa is that you take the step to understand people and experience design. Mm-hmm. So just wondering, how exactly do you do that? Because you say that's the first step before you actually come up with a device or a solution. You have to understand the people and the experience design. So just like an example of how you go about collecting that kind of information.
Okay, so there's something we call user research. Our team has engineers, mechanical engineers. It also has computer scientists. It has clinicians. You have people with nursing background. You have medical doctors like me. So it's and then you have your clinical researcher. And you also have your market researchers and a few design people. And if you don't have the design people, you find a way to actually reach out to the rest of the organization. So what we do as the initial steps of our creativity process or creative process is go to a facility, because for us, those are our customers, hospitals, health workers, or even patients. And just even from the interactions, you just sit with them, observe, probably even have interview sessions to just understand what are their pain points. And once they mention, this is what I'd like to do, for example, or maybe I want to be able to strengthen how I offer my care to mothers and children, and then you follow that further. So you're able to ask, so what is the problem really? So I'll say, I cannot actually find out how the mother is doing from home. And sometimes it's a phone call, sometimes they're gone. We don't have a continuity in care. So they explain that. Or they say, because one of the places we focus on is primary healthcare, I'll go to a health center And just look at the numbers. You're having 100 mothers, let's say, at your antenatal care. You have maybe one health worker. All of them require to be sorted. And a lot of those processes are manual. So you're able to see that pain point. You're able to see the fact that maybe some of them come and wait and they're just tired. The waiting time is insane. And they just go home and they've not been attended to even though they went to the facility. So it's a combination of listening to your potential, let's say, end user. That's number one. Someone would be using a solution like that. Number two, or even someone would be purchasing it. But before you're even there yet, it's just getting to see what is the current state of care process. Where do they really feel they're having a lot of pain? And how do they think they would want to improve it? Then you observe. And then you're able to map that out and then start seeing for yourself what is the most high impact place you would look at. So that's something we actually call user research. Yeah. I hope that answers your question, Stacy.
Yes, thank you.
You're welcome.
I saw there was another question, probably Alex, or am I wrong?
Sorry, I think that was a mistake.
Alex, do you have a question from group one?
No, I think that was a mistake.
Okay.
Thanks for the presentation, though.
You're welcome.
If there are no more questions, thank you again, Beatrice.
Thank you so very much, Carmelo, and thank you, everyone.
So let me stop recording.